are you nervous? And I'm like, I'm actually fucking nervous right now. I think it's like one of the only times that I've been so nervous on a show. My heart is beating so fast.
Okay, well then let's cheers. Let's cheers before.
Cheers. I'm excited to try this wine.
Yeah, same.
Good.
Wine is the perfect dance around any situation.
You know what I mean? It's also a sparkling wine. It's like, is it a champagne? Is it a wine? I'm not a wine girl.
I know what you mean.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Chemical X podcast. It's me, Veronica, and I'm with my girl as always.
Hello, Deandra.
So today we have a very serious episode. I'm saying that I'm smiling because I'm one of those people, like when I'm nervous, when I'm sad, I'm a smiler. Like I'm at a funeral laughing and people are like, what's wrong with you?
Well, I'm at a funeral laughing.
It's really bad, but I have to, like, I'm just gonna say, like,
Peter's
it's a coping mechanism.
Peter's in the room right now and he just confirmed I'm a laugher, which is, it's not nice.
But it's like, it's actually a coping mechanism. So I just want to get that out of the way now before we start going like, why are you smiling? Like, why are you so cheerful? Like, it's me, babe.
Yeah. We've had a couple of interviews.
Well, we've had so many interviews in a row just because there's been something that we wanted to speak about and I kind of like wasn't ready to talk about it. And I didn't want to talk about it too soon or anything. So we've been also just... I can't speak. Okay, what I was trying to say was the reason why we've had so many interviews is because there's been something that I want to speak about and I didn't want to be... non-authentic and pretend like something wasn't happening, and it's really hard to do when you're like have a podcast where you're talking about your life. It's so hard to pretend that like something so big is not happening in your life. So I feel like it was just easier to like patch that up with interviews and focus on someone else. And
if you don't think we're fucking authentic after that, I'm sorry guys, just like unsubscribe. The thought of us making sure we had literally almost 4 interviews so that when we did speak about whatever we were going to talk about, it was going to be 100% like you're listening to 2 girls talk about just, talk about
me. But I do want to say being authentic is like, I've been realizing in these 4 weeks because all I've been thinking about is like what I'm going to say, how I'm going to say it, like just over and over and over again, and really just thinking so much. It's so scary. And being authentic is something that has its pros and cons. And coming every week, it's so fun. It's so therapeutic, and it's so like enjoyable to have a podcast and to relate to everyone and to have people relate to you. But it's also comes with
baggage.
The idea that you have to say a lot of things that you don't want to say and that are really hard to say in front of a lot of people that are listening. And I think that's like, for me, I think this is the most difficult part in our whole podcast, where I have no problem being authentic. Like, I will say everything, but I also do have a very big guard up over my personal life and my emotions because I'm not a very emotional person. So having to come and be authentic, because I know that it ruins everything if I don't come on here and be authentic. Like, it ruins everything if I don't share with you guys what's happening with my life. And I just think like, it's so fun to say, like, you go on and you talk about your life and you have like these people that are listening to you, but it also comes with like the sacrifice of actually having to be authentic.
I think it also makes everything that much more serious. When you finally put it out, it's like there's no turning back. So like, I know a lot of times people can be like saying something and then they're like, well, whatever. It's like, I only told my friend, it's fine if I have to tell my friend, like, change of plans. But when you have people who all of a sudden feel like they know your life and then they have the ability to judge you, it's that much more.
And hold you accountable as well. It's just, it's so difficult.
So you want to...
I really hyped you guys up here. So...
The podcast is ending.
That would have been best case scenario. Fuck. You're like, wait, what?
Wow.
So, I'm going to be more serious to say this. I feel like I need to be like, no smile.
Get yourself together.
But it's really a sad thing. I swear. I'm smiling, but it's really a sad thing. But unfortunately, my boyfriend and I have broken up. So you guys know that he's has always been a really big part of this podcast. And we literally, like, not to say that we're here, because of him, but we literally wouldn't be here right now if it wasn't for him.
For sure.
He really helped us, and starting it, he was the motivation, he was the supporter, he was always here. We could always count on him, and we even took that for granted. And I know a lot of people like love his comments in the background and love to have him on, like loved when he came on, and we're like silent supporters of just him in the back. So I know that for a lot of people listening, it's like I feel like they kind of really knew him in that sense because he was a part of the podcast.
Well, I also feel like they knew of him or they knew him, but there's also that part where, you know, you did talk about your relationship a lot. So there's a lot of people who either felt like they can relate to it or they just thought of your relationship as the ideal relationship and what they're looking for. And I remember, you know, we go out and a lot of people come up to you and they're like, I'm looking for a relationship like you, or I want something like that. So I think that makes it even harder to have to like break the news. Yeah. You know?
I think that was hands down like the hardest part about having to tell people is, you know,
family wise too, right?
Yeah, everyone really viewed us as this perfect couple. And I've spoken in the past how, you know, there's no such thing and everything. But I do think that we really did have this like magical connection. And I think people really could see that. And I think we were this match that was so, you know, like we're saying, everybody could see it. But at the end of the day, like shit happens. And obviously, it's not necessarily what I wanted. It's not what anyone wanted. It's just something that had to happen. And we'll get into like why and stuff like that. But I just think like no relationship is perfect. But the idea that I felt like I didn't want to break this kind of like idea that it was perfect and I didn't want to ruin that for anyone. And I know that sounds weird, but I had so many people come up to me and be like, you know, if you guys break up, I don't believe in love and like you guys are what I want and all this stuff.
That's a lot of pressure for sure for somebody who's in the relationship also.
And it was even for me, like I really viewed us as the ideal relationship as well. So I think breaking up was such a hard pill for me to swallow because I was like, wait, like, but we have the perfect relationship, but we are the ideal couple. Like, why is this happening? And it's been something that's so different than any other breakup I've ever been through. I'm making it sound like I'm breakup girl 100. I've been through a couple of breakups and every single one I will say has been different from the other. I don't believe that there is any two breakups that are the same. Everyone has their own unique experience, depending on the person, depending on the relationship. But I will say that this one was like significantly different, way more different than anything I've ever experienced.
And I could see that you still obviously both have a lot of respect for each other. You know, when I had my breakup, it was a lot more like me lashing out and like I feel like there was less of that respect. Whereas like I see you and the way you're going about it, it's just so amazing to see you like really take the time to like decide what you want to say, how you want to portray, because at the end of the day, like it really sucks that like you get to say your point and he doesn't.
Yeah.
You know, in a way, it's like you're hearing one side story, which, you know, I'm always going to have my girl's side. You know what I mean? But like just to say, it's like when somebody doesn't have the option to like kind of speak their truth, you want to keep that into consideration because you don't want them to look bad or you don't want to say anything that's going to jeopardize what people even think, you know?
100%. And that's what's been like so difficult for me is like trying to find a way that I can be authentic without kind of like bashing. Without bashing, without ruining people's perceptions, because it's so true. Like I have the privilege to be here and say my side of the story and I have the mic. I got the fucking talking stick.
Oh yeah.
And like he doesn't have that. So I just don't feel like it's fair for me to come on and say, you know, everything about the relationship and say what I want. And just because at the end of the day, my story will always paint him as the bad guy, like no matter what. I think that's just, you know, how it is when you're going through a breakup. When in reality, like, that's not the case. Like, there's always going to be issues on both sides.
Yeah.
But, you know, I really thought long and hard about how I could say this with it being as neutral as possible. And while still giving you guys, you know, some sort of explanation and some sort of, like,
for
thing,
sure. And just going back to, like, him being here at the beginning when we started this podcast, you guys know that when we started, it's always been him filming. There's nobody that we've ever felt more comfortable shooting with because it's who we grew this thing with. So like even him not being part of the 100 episode it's fucked up. Like it's a lot. And I don't want you to start crying right now. And I don't know why I'm doing this to you, but I'm just, when we do become big, like he will always be a part of it.
Yeah.
In a way.
And also like I want people to know that this episode is not about like bashing him or anything. Like it's really like in honor of him in a sense. You're like, depends what you say there, babe. But I don't want it to seem like I'm coming on here and I'm ready to shit talk him. Like that is not what's about to happen. Like I'm gonna give you guys my truth and I'm gonna give you guys the things that I've learned and what I've been experiencing. But in no way, shape, or form is this like somewhat of an attack or any like thing negative towards him. And also, whatever you guys are gonna hear, like I said, it's my side of the story.
Yes.
So take that with a grain of salt.
Yes, and also we are still always growing on this podcast. Like I look back at a year ago and the shit I spoke about on my ex-boyfriend. If I could go back in time, I'd do it Veronica style times 100. There's so many things I regret saying. It just was immature. It was wrong. And I think as we grow up, you know, people like I don't know, like they change, they learn, and you know, it's not always hate.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And that's what I've definitely learned. I think going through a couple of breakups, I've kind of learned how to navigate them as well.
Yeah.
And like I said, guys, this has been a breakup that's been like entirely different for me because I've never had to break up with someone who I truly love. And that is possibly one of the most difficult things that you'll ever do. I think it's different to break up with someone who you love and care for because you'll always love and care for someone that you've had a relationship with. But breaking up with someone that you're truly in love with and they're truly in love with you and the breakup happens for reasons outside of love is super difficult. And it's like a very rocky road. And I'm sure anyone who's had to experience that can relate to that. Mm-hmm. So I'll give you guys a little bit of like an explanation because I feel like you guys are like, well, what happened?
Yeah, we're dancing around.
So I've spoken in the past on this podcast how my boyfriend and I have always struggled with communication issues. And I always said how important it was to have good communication in a relationship and how it was kind of like one of the faults in our relationship. We had so much good. The good 100% outweighed the bad, but the bad was bad enough that it didn't matter anymore how good it was. So I think if you want to put in like the list of pros and cons, it's like the pros were endless, but like there was a couple of cons that were so bad that it really impacted the rest of the relationship. Because not to say that it was like anything so, you know, crazy, but when you get into a long-term relationship, there are things that if they're not working out, it makes the relationship not sustainable. So it's not about like, oh, you know, he does this to me or he does this. It's just like the fact that we can't do this properly is jeopardizing the entire relationship because we actually can't have a relationship. And for us, that was communication. You know, he really had a hard time explaining how he was feeling and his coping mechanisms were not great. So I think that's what ended up being kind of, you know, the axe to our relationship was the fact that when we would try to talk through an issue or like something would happen, he wasn't able to deal with that. And a lot of the times it would result in like me, you know, telling him something that I didn't like or something that happened or whatever it may be. And, you know, he would just like lash out and then resort to like ignoring me. So instead of like solving the issue, he would just not speak to me at all. And it's really, really difficult when somebody does that to you because they kind of rob you of your ability to solve the issue, talk about the issue, make yourself feel better. Like you just remove everything from the equation and then you're just stuck in this limbo where somebody's not speaking to you, and the longer they don't speak to you, the more it's hurting you, and then you start feeling like, well, I want an apology now because you're hurting me, you know what I mean? So it becomes a very tricky situation.
And there's a lot of buildup, and in that time of buildup, there's a lot of thought process that goes on in both of your brains. You know, like you guys are both having your own thoughts separately, and I think when you don't hash them out and you don't talk about them, that's how you slowly start growing apart.
100%. And I think it was one of the things that really put a wedge in the relationship, because when somebody shuts you out like that, it ended me feeling really like alone and like not heard, because I felt like when he would talk to me, I had to just like say whatever it would be to make it better, because I didn't want to go through the ignoring again. And like it was so painful. And especially we live together, so when
ignoring someone is one thing. Living with someone and ignoring someone is like a whole other story.
It's really, really difficult. So that was probably our biggest problem, was like conflict resolution when it comes to communication. And our fights were never serious. And that's what sucked. You know, we never fought about anything that was important or anything big.
It wasn't like fighting about like who cheated.
Yeah, it was like just little things that escalated, and like that was what in the end became such a big problem. And you know, like over time you try to put your foot down and you say like, I'm not going to keep dealing with this, like it's not fair, like you need to come to me, you need to come and solve the problem, because it always ended up me having to like come to him and get him out of like the like
I think that's
get him out of the fog.
Yeah, and I think that's the scary thing of being in a relationship. It's like once you kind of like claim your spot in a relationship, someone else can get kind of used to that and think like, well, if I'm always chasing you, then even if I'm pissed, I'm just going to stay in my corner because you're going to come because you always do.
Exactly. And that's kind of the corner that I put myself into. So whether I was wrong, whether I was right, whether he did something wrong to me, it was always me who had to come and chase up for an apology or chase up to fix the issue. And that was really draining. And I think that takes a really big toll on a relationship, and especially married with ignoring, where you're like in your thoughts and you're like having to live side by side by this person who won't speak to you. I think it was just like really torturous in a way.
Yeah.
And like you said, slowly that makes you guys like drift apart because you're no longer like sharing an emotional connection, because you're cutting that off as soon as you don't allow somebody to speak their feelings. So in the end, like that's pretty much what, you know, just escalated to the point where I couldn't do it anymore. It was just didn't make sense anymore.
I know even when like you guys would have your little arguments and I would be like, Veronica, like, are you okay? And you are a pretty private person when it comes to like your relationships or anything like that. You kind of like to fix the problem and not involve anyone, which is what people who are in love want to do. You know, they don't want to get everyone's opinions involved because it really is between you two. But I always remember you having these like little arguments that were so not arguments and so, I'm sorry, stupid.
Yeah, 100%.
But would lead you guys not speaking for 3, 4, 5 days. And I think like that was happening like often.
Yeah.
And it was like stupid in a way.
And I think that's the problem, is because the arguments were so stupid and so like meaningless, but the byproduct of the argument was what was really a problem. It was so hard to justify like, okay, we're going to end the relationship, because the fight itself didn't make sense. It was how we were dealing with the fight, which was what the problem. So it's really hard to tell yourself like, oh, we're breaking up because of this fight, but it's like not really, you know?
Yeah.
So it was really, really hard to find the like the breaking point, because I feel like that's often when a breakup, you wait for this like certain limit or this certain thing. And I always had my like limit, you know, like I was always like, you know, if this happens again, then I'm done, or if this happens, then I'm done. And every time you reach that limit, you kind of change it and you kind of adapt. And
well,
you
I think also the person on the other side is like, well, you've said that before and you haven't changed anything and we've stayed together. So they know the boundaries they can push because they know that you're just talking and it's never going to be fully serious. Because if you were to say, if you do this again and I'm not going to deal with this, like it's done, then the relationship would have been over and then you would have fell through with what you said. But because you didn't, because you love the person and you give chances and all that stuff, is the reason we're here right now.
100%. And I think that, you know, as much as I could say, oh, the breakup is because of, you know, him and this problem, I think, you know, how a relationship works, it's always like both sides. And I think the way that I navigated this relationship too was probably, you know, I tried my best and I did what I thought I had to do and I really stood by it and I tried. But at the end of the day, I never stood my ground, and I created a cycle where I would say like, I can't do this anymore, like you need to stop doing this, it's never gonna happen again. And he would say yeah, it's never gonna happen again, and then it would happen again, and then I would say you can't do this anymore, it's the last time. And you create, you know, as the person that's always for like letting it happen again, like you're the one actually allowing it to happen at that point. It's one thing if it's like 1 or 2 times and like you're giving them a chance, but if it's reoccurring to the point like where how many it's times, on you now, it was on me.
Yeah, like
you know?
How many times can you blame somebody before you choose to stay and you don't follow through on your actions?
Exactly. And I think at the end of the day, like it was really on me. Like I just didn't have the courage, and I genuinely to my core did not want to let the relationship go, and I really wanted to be with him. And that was the struggle, which was like, at what point do I not want to be with him anymore because of this? And you know, like it piles up, and this has been something that's been happening for a long time. And we had one fight, and you know, he ended up, you know, it was a stupid fight over nothing. And like you said, it just like went out of hand. And I kind of told him to leave. And I just like in the moment, like I just had like a moment of like clarity and courage. And I was just like, this is not right. Like I shouldn't be dealing with this right now. Like leave. And I told him to pack his stuff and leave, in which he did. And then we did not.
This was the first time he ever packed up all his stuff and left.
So guys, It's been forever that I keep forgetting to call out an amazing addition that we have to our set. And it's all thanks to Maison by Her on Instagram. So she makes custom coasters, trays, ashtrays, so many things. And she made us these custom Chemical X coasters and a beautiful
Why do
tray.
I feel like the price is right? Like,
why are you doing like
and
that?
a brand new car.
I want to show the
Well, almost and a brand new coaster.
Can you see? How nice is this?
Yeah, so nice.
Honestly, she really, I
and
have
what
to
does
say,
it say,
slayed.
guys? Manifest it, bitch.
But you guys should check her out. It's the perfect gift. It's such a personal, cool thing because you can customize it however you want.
Like, we customize it to have cherries and lips and to say manifest it, bitch, because that's just our vibe right now. But if your vibe is fuck everyone, then get something like that. You know, that's always a classic.
Yeah, so we'll link her Instagram and you could check her out. And thank you so much, Maison by Her, for these cute coasters.
For us to cheers in, so cheers.
Guys, you know that I love a good boxer. And I'm not talking about the ones that fight.
I thought you were going to say a good pair of balls. That too.
You know, not for me, but, you know, good pair of balls. You make it sound like I have balls.
Well, you know what? With those pants, it looks like you have some.
Well, I might as well get myself a pair of Manscaped boxers, guys, because they are the softest boxers out there. And I know we've sold you on the Lawnmower 4.0 and all the shampoos, the conditioners, the nose and ear hair trimmers, which you still need. But if you're doing all this work and you're not packaging the goods in a nice, soft packaging, it doesn't matter.
There is no point of anything if you're not going to put it in a nice pair of comfortable. I can't even explain to you how soft they are, but just think of like butter. Mm-hmm. That's what they are.
Interesting. Butter on your balls. The new tagline. So guys, you need to head over to Manscaped and don't forget to use our discount code
Chemical X at checkout to receive 20% off your entire order and free shipping. So Chemical X at checkout for 20% off and free shipping.
There's so many events in summer and you don't want to show up looking like a raggedy rag. So you're going to go to Izotti. You're going to order yourself a custom Italian-made, tailor-made to you suit. And you're going to look fly. You're going to look fresh. And you're probably going to get all the single ladies at the wedding.
All you have to do is put in all your measurements and the suit will literally deliver custom made to you. So I think it's a win for everyone. You don't have to leave your house. You get a suit that's tailor made to you. I know how annoying it is for a man to have to go to the place, try it on, have an old lady, you know, up on their balls. So this way it avoids all of that. You just go online and do it all at izotti.com. And with our discount code ChemicalX at checkout, you'll receive 20% off your entire order. Order.
Because I was really at this point, like at the end of my rope. And I was also very angry in this moment. And I really lashed out as well. Like we were both like just like in the heat of the moment. And I told him to leave, which was not something I wanted him to do. But I just said it out of anger. And he did leave. But I think that was a blessing in disguise because I almost had to stick to that decision I made on impulse, which I would have never had the courage if I would have waited 2 or 3 or 5 minutes. I would have gotten over my anger and been like, this is not what I want.
Yeah.
But I told him to leave and he left. And then we did not speak for 11 days, which was the longest 11 days of my life. It was 1 year, actually, maybe.
Hold on. Let's like unpack 11 days for a second, okay? 11 days after you tell someone to pack up that you don't truly want to walk out the door is fucked up.
Yeah.
11 days of like no communication. Nothing.
I don't know where you are. I don't know where anything. And this was me really putting my foot down because I said, okay, well, I'm doing this now. Like, I need to follow through. And I always vowed that I always used to say, like, I'm not coming to you next time. You need to come and you need to fix the problem on your own. I'm done coming to you. But it's really hard to explain how difficult it is to live with someone who's not speaking to you. And at a point, you can't anymore. You say, let's fucking talk about this now.
Yeah, you're like, I
live like this.
I've thrown the plate.
Yeah, like
it broke.
Fuck it.
What can I throw next? Like,
exactly.
What can I possibly do next? You know, to make sure he knows that how angry I am. And this time, like, I'm not fucking around.
But the problem was, like, I would always break before he would come around to speaking to me. Because I really I can't do it. I can't sit in silence. I can't, especially if you're here. So when I told him to leave, I said, okay, this is the time that I have to, like, fucking suck it up and just go along with it. And, you know, it's like every day you're waiting, like, is this a day he's going to speak to me? Is this a day he's going to come? And, you know, is he ever going to speak to me again? Like, there's so many things going through my mind.
Can we break down, like, the days? Like, maybe we not talk about all 11 days, but, like, the first day he left, were you like, okay, we're fighting, but he's going to come back tomorrow?
I think because everything is an escalation, and because this whole problem of ignoring, you know, it started out with 1 day, it started out with 2 days, started out with 3 days, because at
you're
the
like,
end,
how far can we go now? Like, 3 days is the max we've done, but it's you coming to him.
7 days is the max we've done.
7 days.
It's just like, I've lived this already. So at the beginning, it was actually easier than at the end, because I was like, okay, well, we've done 3 days before, like, I could do this.
Yeah.
We've done 4 days, I could do this.
So then at 4 days, are you thinking like we're gonna get back?
So at the beginning, I didn't really tell anybody what was happening, and I tried to keep it pretty private, even though he had moved out. Like, I just kind of like ignored what was happening. I literally did not tell a soul what was happening. Mm-hmm. And then like around 4 or 5 days, like, people started finding out through like his friends, because he had moved out, you know, and was staying with his friend. And it kind of came back to my friends and to my sister. And then it was kind of something that I had to like acknowledge was happening, and I had to like admit was actually going on.
I have a question for you. Do you think if you were able to pull off 11 days without any friends knowing, because we kind of all found out before you even had a chance to tell us, because I get it, you're kind of private, and you're like, I want to kind of have the discussion with him, because the way you guys ended was not really a closing. There was a lot left to still be said.
Yeah.
Would you probably have taken him back if nobody would have known and you had the chance to just kind of like put the puzzle back together?
It's difficult to say. Because I don't know, because everything that happened in those 11 days is what led me up to having the courage to leave him.
Right.
Or to like end the relationship. But so it's really hard for me to say yes or no. And like dealing with it alone, it's difficult. And I don't know what I would have convinced myself to do, you know, like to stay with him or not. But I do know that once it passed like 7 days, and obviously I had the support of my friends just kind of telling me like, look, like, this is not right. Like, I don't care if you're used to this, but this is not right. Once like I had that confirmation, it really helped me like understand like, okay, this is wrong. But I do think up until that point, like, I do think I was really seeing like, if you're willing to go this far, like leaving, not speaking to me, and like just out of like this like cycle or whatever, like, I actually don't want this. And I need to be the one to break the cycle, because it's never going to end. And I actually cannot do this anymore. And I've been hurting so much in these past days that even if you come back, it's just for us to get back together, to go where? You know what I mean? Like, and that's how I saw it. It was like, let's say we're walking down a path, you know, you come, you know, you leave for 11 days and then you come back. We're still walking down that same path. Nothing has changed. There will be no change. And the next time it's going to be worse. It's going to be 2 weeks. It's going to be, you know, that, because that's how it is. It always escalates. So I think, you know, the amount of time that it was really what pushed me to the point where I was like, this is now unacceptable. Like, even for myself, like, I really felt like if I take you back, which is what I want, which is like genuinely what I wanted, but if I do this, I'm disrespecting myself. Like, I feel like it's just not fair. And I also know that I'm setting us up for failure, because I'm taking you back and we're going down the same path again. And if this relationship has any sort of hope, it's not in us getting back together right now. It's like, we need to like have a reset. You need to go your way. I need to go my way, because I truly believe that's the only way that people can grow. I don't believe that you can grow in the environment that hurt you. I think that you need to step away from that, and you need to find out your own stuff and heal from it, because also, like, I had a lot of healing to do. He had a lot of healing to do. There was so much hurt in the relationship at this point, because problems can take a toll on the relationship, and it can really make it like not as love and fun as it used to be. And I just didn't want to keep us in this like not happy anymore, something that was turning toxic, which it shouldn't have. So I just had to make the tough decision to say, like, I'm not going to keep torturing us and putting us down this same path, because at the end of the day, like, I was enabling this. I was enabling it. Every time I took you back and I like forgave you, I was enabling the fact that it would happen again.
Yes.
And I knew that I just had to be the one to finally put a stop to it, because it's just obviously not fun for either of us. And I know that neither of us wants to be apart, but I think it's like the difficult thing of like having to decide to do so. So I really just like, I think just 11 days for me was like, this was long enough to make my decision. If it's not for like what I want, it's just what I deserve. It's what, and like you said, if no one knew, but people did know. And the reality is, like, when people know that this has happened, it's
like a fire under your ass.
Yeah, it's like, okay, well, now everybody knows, and like, I can't just, pretend it didn't happen.
Yeah, and I think it was kind of like, I obviously knew you guys had issues, but I never really,
more issues than Vogue.
I never really, it's like any friend, you want to be there for them, but also if they're not willing to share, it's because they're not ready. And also, everyone has their own path in life. You kind of want to just let them go through it. And I know that you're kind of a private person, so I know you were going to tell me when you were ready. Mm-hmm. But I think at a point, it comes down to, I'm on FaceTime with you and you're like, it's this many days we don't talk. And I think at some point I was like, Veronica, like, that is not okay. And sometimes you in a way have to be ready to hear that. And, and I think you were. But sometimes hearing someone else validate how you feel is like, okay, I am not crazy for feeling this way, and I am not alone, and I'm okay to have friends be there for me and kind of like understand the situation in a 100%.
Way. I know we talk a lot about like letting your friends, figure it out on their own and like go through their stuff and like go
I'm a true believer, and I always say like, let someone go through what they need to go through, and then when they talk to you about it and they're ready, then they'll be ready to listen because you're not coming kind of like attacking them. 100%. But I think it was kind of at a point where you were like kind of drained from 11 days of thinking, is somebody coming back? Am I broken up? Like, what's he doing? There's so many things that goes through someone's mind. And I think when you really have 11 days to sit in your mind, every scenario, everything has already entered.
100%.
So like, you've done the craziest part, which is sit in silence.
Which is the worst, which is the absolute worst. And I will say, like I said, we always say like, oh, let your friend do what they want. But I do think like a big impact that, having people supporting me and like giving me their opinion is, the reality is when somebody doesn't give you their opinion, as much as you might give a friend your opinion and they might not take it, it still is there. And it's still like a thought that they think about.
It lingers.
So whether or not you think that they're listening to you or that they care what you have to say, sometimes you just need to actually say your opinion, because it might be something that they're already thinking, but they don't know if it's true or they don't know if it's real. And I think for me, there was a point like a couple of months back where, I was kind of like clued Alessia in on that. We were in a fight and we weren't really speaking at the moment. And she just kind of said like, well, like, it's not really normal that you guys don't talk for that long. And because I'm in my own relationship and I'm so used to it now, but I did know deep down that it was wrong, but I just didn't feel like it was wrong enough.
It's like anything, you get immune to it.
Yeah, and I didn't feel like, I always felt like it was something I could deal with it. It was something that I could get used to, or we could figure it out, because it seemed so like quizzical. Like it seemed so small, something so figure outable, That's not even a word, but when she said like, no, it's like, it's kind of like wrong. And I was like, fuck, like it is, because I was always keeping it within myself and within my relationship. And obviously my partner's not going to tell me, yeah, it's wrong. Like it's him who's doing it at the end of the day. You're always not going to really like admit how bad it is, But I think someone from outside the relationship looking in can really have that like unbiased point of view. And I think that really made an impact for me, because I was like, okay, maybe this is like important enough that it's like, well, that it makes sense, the impact that it's having on
I think my whole thing was like, your arguments are so stupid, but if you're willing to like walk out and not speak for 11 days with an argument that's so stupid, what would life be, in 10 years? What would life be in 5 years? Or like, if you guys decide to get married and have kids, like there's so many crazy things that are going to happen in our lives. So if the little things are finding hard to come to like a conclusion or just like an agreement, then maybe it's something that's not for you.
100%. And I wanted to talk about a little bit about like things that I've learned going through a breakup and having to make this really hard decision. And that's one of them, is that you can have the perfect love. You can have this like magic fairy tale connection. It could all be perfect. People can look at you and be like, oh my God, you guys fit perfectly together. Everything is just perfect. And it's just not enough, because something can come, like you said, so stupid, so small, so insignificant, but be so significant that it actually has the power to ruin a relationship that is full of love. And like, I have nothing bad to say about, like, we really did not have any problems that, you know, a lot of people do have, you know, whether it's like possessiveness or controlling or jealousy or any of those things. Like, we were really supportive of each other and like motivational, and he trusted me and I trusted him 100%. But unfortunately, like, that little problem just couldn't be solved no matter how much we tried. And it was really shit, because you had to say, like, we're gonna have to throw away, you know, quote unquote, this perfect, amazing love because of something so small. And that was really difficult for me. And that's what I just realized is one of my like lessons that I've realized, is that love is actually not enough. As much as you think like we love each other, we'll ride or die for each other, it's not enough to have a genuine, sustainable relationship.
And to build a foundation.
Yeah, because that's what's important, is the sustainability. Like, yes, I could have gone on and we could have still been in love and still had that fire and still kept going, and it would have been back and forth and toxic.
But how much is it love and fire when you can't even communicate?
But then at the end of the day, like, how long can you go? Like, yes, you could go and it's fire, but at one point the fire will burn out. And that's what was the relationship. It was beautiful. It was love. It was everything. It was amazing, but it was not sustainable because of these things that are actually, relationships are almost like a business. It's like you really both need to be willing to put in 50% of the work, halfway, half. It has to be equal. I can't even stress enough
I don't
how much
even
it
like
has
the
to be
50-50. I think it's 100-100.
Yeah, 100-100. That's what I'm saying. It has to be equal. Both partners have to be willing to
I just times two'd it. Like, I basically
the
said
ratio's the same, babe. I don't even think 50-50. 100-100.
Well, because I think when I hear 50-50, it's kind of like you put in your work, I put in my work. It's like, no, you actually have to be on your own, do all your work. They need to do all their work, and then you have to like line up.
Yeah.
Because if you guys are on different pages, then even if you put in 60 and 40, it's still not going to work.
100%.
100%.
And yeah, that's another thing I realized. We always say it has to be equal. Both partners have to put in the most, but you never realize until you're in a relationship where it starts to feel unequal.
And there's like that push-pull kind of like feel.
But that's what it should be. There should always be like a push and pull. So at one point, what? Yeah, give and take. Like, it should be like, if I'm going to run, you're going to chase me. But next time you run, I'll chase you. But in reality, he was running and I was chasing the whole fucking time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think that there will always be like ups and downs and one person more, one person less. But it's always going to be equal in the end. But for us, you know, we had a little bit of an imbalance in that sense. And I was always like chasing him. And it was not for love. It was not for like, I wasn't chasing affection. I wasn't chasing love or those things. I was just like chasing him to communicate. I was chasing him. And in that way, you're all. So, okay, let me explain this. There's something called a runner and the chaser dynamic. So in every relationship, there's that, right? And like you said, like it should be, you know, sometimes one, sometimes the other.
So with my ex-boyfriend, it was like I was the runner, he was the chaser always. But then when I would catch that glimpse of like him not wanting to like run anymore,
chase.
Yeah, when he wasn't chasing anymore, I'd be like, oh shit, I maybe have like overstepped my boundaries, and like maybe it's my turn to kind of like balance back the relationship. And that's only when I like knew that I wasn't getting the chaser back, would I kind of just run back.
Exactly.
But like when you have someone who doesn't even run back, I can't imagine.
It's very difficult. So like I said, every relationship has that, and it's supposed to be balanced, right?
Yeah.
So
I think there's always someone who does it a little bit more.
Yeah.
But it also depends the fight, like who really feels the guilt in that.
Yeah. And everything. But when one person is doing it all the time, that's an issue, you know? And the interesting thing about the runner and chaser dynamic is, and I'm sure anyone listening goes like, okay, I'm the runner, okay, I'm the chaser, you know?
Yeah.
But the interesting thing about the dynamic is that you would initially think that the person running is the problem. You would think the person that's always running away is the one who needs to work, who needs to do the work, who needs to fix it, who needs to stop running so that the chaser can catch up to them, right? That's what you would think. But in reality...
No, the runner is the one who's always running from the problem.
Exactly. So you would think that the runner is the one that needs to do the work. You would think that. right? Because the person chasing is the one that's trying to fix this, that's trying to get whatever it is, and the runner is running away from it.
Well, I think they both have to learn.
Okay, well, my point is that usually you're chasing after the runner to do something.
I hear what you're saying.
You want them to do something.
Like the chaser, ideally, why are you chasing?
Exactly. So ideally, the runner, you would think, is the person who has the most work to do and who needs to stop running, who needs to sit and take accountability and, learn how to do whatever it is you want them to do. But the reality is the runner will never stop running unless the chaser stops chasing. So the first person and the person who has to do the most work is the person who is actually chasing. Because think of if you're getting chased. Literally, if you're getting chased, you will never stop running unless the person stops chasing you. And the person who's chasing is actually fueling the person more and more to keep running. And once the chaser will stop and set up the wall and set up the boundary, that's truly when the runner can then slow down, take a look around, oh my God. And that's when the true work starts. And it's difficult because the person who chases always has that gap. They always feel like they're trying, they're putting these like expectations. And the more you put expectations, the more you chase, the more the person is like totally running away from that, whether they want to or not. It's just like instincts. And all the chaser wants is for the person to stop running. But the reality is it has to be you who has to stop chasing. And that's what I did. And it was very difficult because the scariest thing about being a chaser is you're so afraid that if you stop,
they won't run back.
Yeah. And that was my biggest fear. And I said that a lot to him and I explained that to him. And I really had that deep fear that if I didn't fight for it, if I didn't fight to solve the problem, if I didn't chase after you every time, that it would just never get solved, that the relationship would fizzle and die. And I often felt like the reason it was still alive is because I was beating the heart, making sure that we would solve the problems and doing the dirty work, and chasing. And, when those 11 days happened, I was just like, well, I gave you the chance to chase me and you didn't. And you like made my worst fear come to life, which was that if I stopped chasing, you wouldn't run from me. And he didn't. And that was like really difficult for me. And that was when I realized, okay, this needs a reset. This needs a break. We need to be apart because we're stuck and it's not balanced. It's not, but I think it was really difficult for me to understand that it was me who had to do it. Like as the chaser, you kind of always you're always waiting on the runner to do something for you. Like you're always putting these expectations, like once you do this, we'll be perfect. Once you do this, we'll be perfect. Yeah. But in reality, it's you who has to do the work. And you need to actually stick by your boundaries and say, you know what? I'm going to stop. I'm going to stop chasing you. I'm going to stop having expectations. That's it. And that was the hardest thing. And I thought that was like a big lesson for me because I always felt like I was like, oh, well, if this is just fixed, then we're good, But I was fueled by like the fear that he wouldn't chase the relationship. And, over time, like you said, people get used to that. They bank on the fact that you're always going to run for them. And whether or not he wanted just as much to have a good relationship, he just knew that I would always come in the subconscious. So I think it's so important. And looking back now, like if I can say I learned one really important thing, it's that no matter what your fear is, like if you're afraid that they won't chase you, then that's what it is. Because if you don't set your boundary, and also you're living the fear because you know it's there. Yeah. And if you're already going through it. If you don't set that boundary at the beginning and actually stick by it when you say, if you don't come, that's it. And that's what I would do. And I would never stick by it. I would always change my limit. It would always go higher and higher. And if you don't do that at the beginning, then it's done. Because you really set the tone that you would willingly do anything. I think like the biggest lesson, if you're getting into a relationship, it's to really, I'm not going to lie, like be yourself fully at the beginning and show who you are so that somebody who's coming in, you're not playing this whole 6 months of you're being on your best self and like you're not fully showing someone who you are. I think that's another thing. It's like showing who you are at the beginning will only enable like the right person in your life because you're just kind of getting rid of that 6 month jail time. Yeah. If you show someone who you are at the beginning, then they know what they're signing up for. 100%. And I also think it's important to, allow, like I always thought my relationship was kind of invincible because we were so in love. And we had this perfect connection. I always felt like, well, we are special and we have something that no one else has. So none of our problems can be big enough to ruin the relationship. I always lived in this kind of mindset like that. And
yeah,
you know, and so
yeah.
So you give more and you do more because you feel like, well, what's the worst that could happen? Because we're meant to be together forever. And that's what I truly believed. You know, I always felt like, oh, well, this will get fixed eventually. We'll fix it eventually. And if I have to try more now, that's okay. Like, I know it's going to get fixed eventually. But that was the wrong way to go about it. And that's the thing, when you're so in love, like to that extent, you will literally do anything for this person.
And accept anything.
And it's like embarrassing to say. And first of all, guys, I want to say, even to this point, like I had to really get to a point where I was even like, took so much for me to get here. It really took so much, and so much like confirmation that this was like what I had to do, and there was no turning back. And when everyone found out, it was like holding me accountable, and like there was so many elements that were involved that made it possible for me to even do, because it felt like it was something that I could never ever do.
Yeah.
And
I don't think you even wanted to do it.
No, I didn't.
I think it was like people found out you hadn't talked to him, and you were even trying to control like who knew, who didn't know. And I think that's when it starts getting like super like confusing, because you're left in the dark. You don't know what's going on.
I just think that there's a difference between wanting to do something and knowing what you have to do. Mm-hmm. And I really, truly did not want to do this. But I knew that it was the right thing to do.
I think most people in life know what they have to do.
Yeah.
They either choose to like do it, or they choose to just try and work on it, or just accept that those things are not going to change.
I mean, I just think the craziest part about the relationship is like, and I've had like these moments where I literally thought this to myself, and I was like so in love. And I know I'm making it sound really one-sided, but he was also so in love with me, okay? And he still is so in love with me. It's making it sound like I'm this obsessed girl with pictures of him on my wall. But like we definitely had like a crazy connection that was nothing like I ever felt before. And it was so powerful that there was times where I would literally like think to myself, like, okay, if he, like, let's say, and he never would, but let's say he would cheat on me. Would I leave him? Would I have the balls to leave him? Because I always said I would never stay with someone that would cheat on me. I would never, ever. No, nobody loves you if they cheat on you. I promise you guys, I would have stayed if he cheated on me. Like, maybe not now, because our relationship was so rocky and like this has been coming for a long time. But like when I was in like the heat of our relationship, the peak of our relationship, I can honestly, genuinely imagine myself not able to let the relationship go because I was not ready. And I think that's so important. I think in every relationship, or, you know, in one that love is so big and so deep, there's times where you're just not ready to do something, whether or not you know it's right to do, you know? And I knew for a long time that, you know, this was the right thing to do, because these were like problems that were really putting a wedge between us, but I was just not ready. I could not do it. It's like an addiction.
Yeah.
It's like, just a couple more days, a couple more months.
Do you remember when my ex-boyfriend and I broke up, and I was like, fuck, like, I think we're going to give this another go. Like, we took time apart, and it was like, you know, it's always like when you take a couple months apart, but you haven't really worked on yourself, and you're like, okay, maybe like now, maybe it'll be different this time around. And I remember like sending you the message saying like, look, I just had a talk with him, and I think we're going to give this another go. And I know like anyone who's listening is like, well, anyone you tell, it's like, shit, Alea, like you came this far, like you're already mentally prepared for this. You went down that path. Like, why would you go down it again? Like you've come this far, you know? And I remember you literally sending me a message and being like, look, like, you make the decision at the end of the day. Like, we're like, what you decide to do is not going to...
We're colleagues, fuck.
We're colleagues. What you decide to do is not going to change our relationship. But I just, like, want you to think about it. But I respect any decision you choose. And that lingered, you know? It's like, in the back of my head, I know I should not be doing this again. But I'm going to give it a go. And like you're saying, you know, sometimes you have to allow someone to just... go through it again. If they have to be like reminded 8 times why it's not going to work for the 9th time for them to leave, then you have to allow someone to also do that, you know? And that's why I think sometimes speaking is important, as well as like not speaking.
Yeah. And I do agree. I think I would never be here right now if it wasn't for all the times that I gave it another go and I tried again and I forgave and I went back. I really needed the confirmation. And I think even if I did at those times end the relationship, I would not be as firm and as solid as I am in my beliefs right now if I did it back then. Because I think I really needed to see. I really needed to see every time that I was promised something and it didn't happen. I needed to see it, because or else I would have always lived in hope.
Yeah.
And I think that's super difficult. And I think I finally got to the point where like enough things, like I had enough that I was like, okay, I cannot turn back now. And like, I know no matter what, that even if we get back together, this is not going to go like right now. If we get back together, it's not going to go where I want it to go. It's not going to be sustainable. We're only going to be like pushing the expiry date, you know, like we're not actually fixing the problem.
Yeah.
I truly believe that, like I said, you need to grow outside of the environment that hurt you. And maybe like, it's not that I hurt him or anything. I think both of us have stuff to work on. And when you hurt each other,
perspective, right? Like he can see it as like you hurt him too. Yeah. Like it's both ways.
But you know, any pain in a relationship is something that's felt on both sides.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, you really need your time apart to heal and to grow. And I always say, like, you know, if it happens, then it happens, and it comes back and it's at the right time, then sure, like I'm 100%, you know. But to say like, oh, 2 weeks and like we're back at it, like you're walking down the same road.
Yeah.
You know, I really need time.
Yeah. I have so many questions for you. So now, being out of your relationship, is there anything like moving forward that it has become a necessity that you need well, now it's communication for sure.
Yeah.
Communication, I think you really don't realize how much communication is so fucking important. Because if you're feeling a certain way and someone's not able to validate it, it's so hard to like, because sometimes we just want to be heard. We don't even want like you to agree with us, like, and vice versa. It's just like if you're not actually hearing someone out, it's like, fuck, like, why am I even doing this?
100%. And I think I also wasn't hearing him out too, because when he like took away my ability to speak, by the time we would speak, I was so like, angry and like so much emotion that there was like no, like, you don't get to feel anymore. Like, you hurt me so bad. And like, that was a problem too. Like, by the time he would speak to me again, I was so angry that it was like, you owe me every apology in the world. Like, this hurt. So it's like I'm overlooking his feelings as well to like what actually started the fight, you know? So there were so many things that went wrong, and like communication is literally everything. Like, it's higher than love. Like, without communication, you cannot have love. It like enables love, you know? So for sure
true.
that. And, you know, something that, just talking about like taking time apart and like growing, something that I really like just recently accepted, and I always had this belief, and from the beginning of our relationship, I would always say, and it's something that I even still kind of like believe, but whatever. I always used to say, like, it's you or it's nobody. Like, I truly felt that in my bones. It's like, it's either I'm with you or I'm with no one. And for a long time, I could not stand having no one. Like, not about not no one. It's just I couldn't not stand not having you. Like, it's not about me being alone. I could be alone if I want, but I needed him. I needed you, you know?
Yeah.
And I really felt like those were my two options. It was either I had you or I was alone, and that was fine, but I was not going to have you. And that was something that was really difficult for me, even getting out of the relationship. I really felt like I was making this decision of like, I'm going to be alone forever. I'm choosing me. These are my two options, and that's what it is. And I think like over time, whether or not I still truly believe like that it's him or no one, I just think it's like a really depressing and a sad way to live. And I think that in itself was something that stopped me from leaving the relationship, is because I felt like I only had two decisions, and it felt like there was two boxes. It's either we were together or there was no one, and there was never going to be anyone, and you were not going to be there.
Oh my God, it's such a bad way to look at life.
It's so bad. And I truly believed it. And I still do feel that way. Like, it's such a powerful connection. It's hard to believe that that could ever exist again. But the idea that I was just shutting out any possibility, anything, but not even just like relationship wise, just the idea of saying it's you or no one is such a negative way to look. And it really made me feel really negative for a long time. I even like,
wow, I never thought you'd be here saying this. I've heard you so many times say like it's him or it's nobody, and I'm like, it's such a bad way to look at life, because you literally don't know life. You're literally just living day by day. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, and you don't know what are going to be your wants in a year. Like, it might completely change, you know, from getting older and experiencing different things. And I think like I'm so happy to hear you even say that. This has been big growth.
I mean,
and I think
I don't want it to sound like I'm like, oh yeah, you know, I realized it's not him or no one. It's not that. It's just that I've accepted to stop holding that over myself.
Yes.
And all that I've done is like accepted, okay, life is life, and I don't know what can happen.
Yes.
And I'm gonna, whether or not I believe it, because like, if I'm being honest, I do believe it, but am I going to keep holding myself to that standard and keep putting myself in those two boxes because you can only choose one? No. I've decided, like, you know what, whether or not that's how I feel, I'm not going to live that way, and I'm going to live my life, and I'm going to keep myself open. And just for the sole reason that it's so heavy to live like that. It's so heavy. And the idea just to be open and to like live life for what it is, you're not making what feels like a lifetime decision of like, okay, I didn't choose you, so now I'm alone. Like, I felt like that in itself was heavy. And whether or not, let's say, quote unquote, I'm alone forever, at least living with the mindset that anything could happen is already a better way to live.
Yes.
Get what I'm saying? So that was my mindset change. Was not like, okay, I decided, wait, maybe there's someone else for me out there. It's just more, I'm going to stop holding myself to these two options because it's just so draining. It's so heavy and it's so depressing. And it's what kept me in the relationship for so long, is because I truly, truly believed it. And I felt like as soon as I step out of this, I'm stepping into the box of me alone and forever, you know? And that was such a hard...
I think a lot, like whenever anyone gets out of a relationship, I think that's how a lot of people see it. It's like, it's him or it's no one, or like, I'm never going to find somebody who has those qualities. Like, it's really him or no one, and I'm just accepting the fact that I'm gonna be alone forever. I've been there. But I also think like you can't base all your experiences based on like what it is like you want in your next partner, because like I was saying, like things change. And also I think like every relationship kind of builds you up to like learn what it is you want and don't want. And I think like you've kind of reached a point where you're like, wow, I found a guy who was able to be supportive of my dreams, not jealous. And that already was something you didn't have in any relationship before. That was so new to you, and that felt like freedom. But what you don't know is that sometimes those qualities are still available in somebody else, whether it's him in the end or whether it's somebody else. I just want you to know that just because somebody had certain things doesn't mean that they're not available in somebody else with different qualities. Like, it might not be exactly, but what I'm trying to say is when you put that negativity towards like it's him or it's no one, it's like you're like basing the world and the judgment of like other people based on like what you had, but also without knowing what's out there in a way.
I mean, I think even 100%. But I think even now, like, it has nothing to do with anyone else, because I still...
Well, it's also still new and it's fresh, 100%.
You know? But I mean, like, my change of, like, mindset has nothing to do with, like, anyone else or looking at a new partner or, like, even any sort of new thing. It's really just, like, because I still cannot imagine myself with anyone else, and that's fine. I think it's just the idea that I've stopped holding myself to those two options has made me feel more free. It's made me feel like, because every day, like waking up and like thinking of that and like thinking of the relationship in that sense of like the two decisions felt really bad and felt really heavy. And I think just allowing life to play out as it is and not saying whether it's what I want or what it's not I want, not putting myself like, okay, it's this or it's this. Like, I think just that energy of speaking that and saying it out loud and living by it is so sad. And I think whether I end up with him or not, I think I just want to live a life where I'm just open. Where I'm just open to doing whatever makes me happy. And if it's staying alone for the rest of my life, I'll fucking stay alone for the rest of my life. I love being alone. I have no problem being alone. That was never an issue for me, you know? I always said, when we first got into a relationship, I always said, I love being by myself. I am 100% good alone. I don't need you. The only reason why we're in this relationship together is because you add to my life. And I like the way you are in my life, you know? But I could be good without you. And we were always on the same page with that. And if I have to be alone forever, I'll be alone forever. And if it's with someone else, it's with someone else. And if it's with him,
but also
then it's
when
with
you
him.
get in a relationship and then things happen and stuff, you do get comfortable with somebody.
No,
and then it's harder to say like, oh, well, I'm good being alone. Because that suddenly doesn't feel like a possibility when you're in it as much. It's easy when you get in a relationship being like, you cool? You cool? Like, I am so good being alone. But then feelings, emotions, things you experience together are all things that make it super hard to say, I'm okay being alone. It's like, I'm a very okay person being alone. Like, I am so happy being alone. But also when I am in a relationship and then like certain things happen and like there's that love there, it's like the possibility of being alone is just very different. You don't see it the same way.
100%.
Yeah.
I will say though, like, and something that I learned in a positive note is like, I am proud of how I carried myself in the relationship because, and I think it's also just my personality. I am a very independent person, and I can truly say that all of my, like, what kept me there was not like me needing him in my life for like any other reason than like the addiction of like love and genuinely loving him and wanting him in my life. There was nothing else that held him to me, you know? And I'm happy that I still kept my life the way that I wanted it. Like, you know, like I remember telling somebody that we had broken up, and they were like, oh, you can come out now and you can like go out with us. And I was like, I could have done that anyway. I just didn't want to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I just don't want to go out. Like, it's fine. Like, I could have done whatever I wanted, and I lived my life. I focused on my goals. I focused on my projects. I lived exactly how I would have had I been alone, you know? And he added and he helped us out. And like I said, you know, we did lean on him in certain aspects and like the podcast and stuff like that and like emotionally, but I really always kept myself solid. And I know that for a fact because being out of the relationship, I'm still solid, like whether or not like I'm really hurt and like emotionally feeling the loss as a person and in my life, like I'm still very solid, and it has not affected me in how I've lived my life because I did not lean on him for a lot of things that most people in a relationship do lean on someone.
Yes, exactly.
And that's what I would say, like, I'm really proud of. And if I could tell anyone to do, like, that's how you should run your relationship. You should never lean on someone to, you know, like the supportive thing, like,
well,
maybe
there's so many things, like financially, if somebody's literally financially supporting your whole entire
100%,
life.
Yeah, that's
let
the
me tell
one.
you, you're
gonna feel the loss.
And who's the chaser and who's the runner? Oh,
I be chasing for those chicks.
You be chasing for that money.
But it's so true. But even like, not even just financially, but you know, sometimes like a lot of times, like for women or girls, like,
I think you also like you found kind of your purpose in life. Mm-hmm. You're working on your goals, and these are all things that'll move you day by day with like, yes, being hurt, but still feeling I gotta do this, I gotta do that. You have the thing that's keeping you busy to get to where you want to get to. Whereas some people who feel like they don't have their purpose or they haven't found it yet are kind of like leaning their relationship on that, which makes it so much harder, why they go back.
So much harder. And as big of a part as my relationship was, I still had so many other big things going on, which was what was important. And like anyone getting into a relationship, even if you don't know what your purpose is, always be working on something that you love and that you're passionate about. Even if it's a hobby, just do something that you can feel like is your own. Because I think, like I said, so another example of like leaning on someone, a lot of girls in a relationship will lean on their partner as a sense of like validation or like security in like confidence wise. Like they feel like they need their boyfriend to hype them up, make them feel beautiful, make them feel sexy, make them feel this, which is so normal because, you know, we always lean on our partner to boost our confidence. But if you are leaving that relationship and now you feel like you lost your whole source of like security and confidence because they were giving that to you, then it just shows like you were not strong on your own confidence. You know what I mean? Like I think
1000%.
It's so important to really identify what you're leaning on your partner for. And that's what I will say that I'm really happy with. I leaned on him for many things, but a lot of the things I still stood on my own 2 feet for, whether it was my life, whether it was like motivation and stuff. And like I said, he motivated me to do a lot of things, but deep down, like where I am now, I'm like good. Like I've like accepted that I can do this on my own. And I think it's so important to always keep that. Always keep the fact that whether somebody can help you and boost you and maybe help you get further, you can always do it by yourself. And don't ever let someone be like the 100% motivation, the 100% confidence, the 100%
has
like
to come within
anything. You have to have that for yourself, or else you're always going to lean on that person. And once you leave the relationship, it's going to hit you a lot fucking harder.
Yeah.
Because it's hit me emotionally, but like in the way I've run my life, because I run my life around myself and I have all my things for myself, it's in that way it's unaffected. You know what I mean? And I've really like built myself up to be strong in all those areas where I don't feel like it's like, oh, it feels like, in a lot of places it's like the loss is there, but it's not as significant as if I like leaned fully on him for that, you know?
That's why I think it's important, you know, even in a relationship, not to base, your entire life on someone.
And not to give 100%.
I've heard friends who are like,
did I just Did I just change? I just said not to give 100%. I just fucked up our other quote there, 100.
Well, you made it very clear when you were running.
Too soon.
Too fucking soon.
But I mean, like, don't give 100% of who you are.
Yeah.
Like, don't give up who you are for someone else. Continue what you're saying.
I agree. The end. No, we're not done. We can go on for like... Oh, yeah. Cheers. Peter, do you have any questions? Do you want to say anything?
I don't have any questions.
I think we're just proud of our girl.
Her promotion.
Oh, yeah.
Her launch.
Oh, yeah. I got
There's so many things happening in your life that you have to be proud of. Yeah. We spoke about everything you've learned. Like, is there anything else on the phone you wanted to add? I think you've pretty much covered it. Do you think going forward you will be a little more open, like when something happens? Like, are you going to be more open to telling friends about it, or do you think like you're still going to be kind of like closed off in that sense?
I think
because like being secretive is like a blessing and a fucking curse at the same time. It's like you want people to validate, so it's like nice to hear people's opinion, but then also like the opinion should only matter of the two people that are in the relationship. So it can get very difficult. Yeah. There's so many things I remember not telling any friends about because I didn't actually want people's opinion about because I thought I could handle on my own. And I thought like, I don't need other people that are outside of it to give their input when I know what like needs to be worked on or needs to be done. Like, why do I need somebody else to like kind of judge me in a way?
100%. I think that it's hard to say because I think it's been difficult because once you keep everything a secret, which is what I tend to do, I keep it very private. I never really tell anyone. You also put yourself in this box where you go so far that no one understands anymore. And then when you actually do want to speak about something, nobody understands because you haven't been cluing them in on what's been happening. So it's so difficult to actually open up because it's like, well, it's because this happened and this happened months ago because you never say anything. And I think I ended up feeling so alone because he was not speaking to me in problems and I couldn't tell anyone else because nobody had any idea what was going on in my relationship. And I was just like alone to deal with it by myself.
I mean, I think I had pretty much like, I think you kind of like told me ish. But then I was always like, I'm not going to say anything because like, I know you didn't want my opinion.
Yeah.
You know, like it was like, we're fighting, but I don't want to, you would always say we're fighting, but I don't want to talk about it. And I'd be like, okay.
I think it goes back to also like a personal issue as well. Like I really don't like talking about my feelings. Like it's always been a thing. And it's funny that I realized in this time why I do that. You know how like you never like think through why you do a certain thing. Like I've always been like, oh, I'm someone who's private. I'm someone who never talks about my emotions. But then like during this time, you know, during this time, I was really like, why do I do this? Like, why am I this way? And you know how they say everything always goes back to your childhood. And I kind of connected the dots and like 100% the reason why I don't say anything is because I have middle child syndrome. But like as a kid, I was always the entertainer. The what? The bully. Yeah, I was bullied. But I was always like the entertainer. So I was always like, if someone was sad, I was going to like do something goofy or like funny or tell a joke and make people feel better. And I think being that kid, you never want to make people, like you never want to bring your problems under other people. So when I would get hurt, I would never cry. I would never show extreme emotions because I didn't want to bother anyone. Like I always wanted to just be like the happy one that would make everyone happy. And even now I'm really like that. I never feel like it's like
you always kind of want to show the world that you're strong.
Yeah, but it sucks because it comes out of like I don't want to bother you with my problems. So it's like my friend was like, you know, going through her breakup and I never wanted to tell her what was going on with me because I was like, oh, I don't want to take away from your problem. But it's like at the same time, like I'm looking back and I'm going,
you're like, we could have related.
Yeah, but it's just funny how I always feel like I need to take the role of making everyone else feel better. And like, I don't want to ruin anybody's mood. And it's like, oh, it doesn't really matter. I could deal with it myself. And it's just something that I've realized over this time actually comes from being a kid and just kind of being always that kid who had to just like go along with it and like make everyone happy. And like, oh, she's never mad. She's never sad. And that's kind of come along. And
I think
it's something that I definitely need to work on because it did kind of put me in a box where I felt like I couldn't speak to anyone and I really felt alone. And I felt like I couldn't talk to anyone because it was too far gone. And at that point, I didn't want anyone's opinion either because I felt like no one would understand it because I didn't tell anyone.
And also, in a way, you knew what you had to do and you weren't ready.
Yeah.
So why talk about it?
I mean, I think like it was a blessing and a curse, and it did keep me in my like comfort zone for a while, and I did have the ability to control who knew what, but I did think it also put me in a place that was really sad and really like especially coming on the podcast every week. Like I would come on, like there would be like really shit things happening, and I would come on and I would laugh and I would joke and I would smile, and nobody knew what was happening. Like nobody knew that it was like the worst fucking 3 days of my life, but I still had that ability to put on a happy face. And it's really shit.
These 3 weeks were really, I can't imagine.
Yeah,
like,
but it's not the first time that I come on here and it's 4 days we're not speaking, and I still come on and I still, you know, show a face. And I think that is like, as much as it's like, oh yeah, so noble, like people will always like props me like, oh, you look great, like you're all good. And I'm like, yeah, but also no, because I wish that I could be the person that could be more open, because it's led me to deal with things on my own and led me to like just pile everything up on my own and not ever feel like the comfort to tell anyone, because I always feel like, oh, like I'm here for you, but like you don't need to know about me, you know what I mean? And like, and I think in a way that stops people from connecting with you. I think that always puts a wall around me.
I agree.
You know, it's like I'll be there for you, but you can't be there for me. And it's like almost like a sneaky selfish thing, you know what I mean? And I don't want to be like that, but it's something that I've learned. Like,
I think also it makes people feel like weirded out to tell you like their problems. Like, fuck, like this is what's going on in my life, but like I don't want Veronica to judge me because like fuck.
Yeah,
you know what
I don't know
mean?
What's going on in your life.
Yeah.
And also it makes people feel awkward to tell their opinion.
With me, you were still pretty open. Like I still knew like a lot of stuff. Maybe I didn't know everything. There was a lot of things I didn't know, but I think I kind of, you know.
I mean, I will say there's a lot of things you didn't know.
Absolutely,
but
for
you
sure.
had no choice because you were here, and often like you were the only person that I could not hide it from, because you would show up and then you'd be like, "What's going on? Like, why aren't you guys speaking? Like, what's wrong with him?"
Like I was the
like,
one person like you could not hide from me, because we had to film, and like if you're fighting and he's not clicking the buttons, it's like why do we need to get somebody else? Like these are all
like,
the things.
Why aren't you guys speaking? Like what's going on? Like I see something's off, and it was
like it's awkward when we get on set. It's awkward when we get off. You know, like these are all things that you know it's you can hide from, but
when somebody's in your zone, it was really difficult to like keep that private. But I think, like I said, everything happened the way that it should have. I mean, I didn't say this, but everything happened the way it should have happened. Yeah. And I don't regret anything. I don't regret not leaving earlier. I don't regret leaving now. Everything I feel like worked out the way it should have. You know, whether it's keeping it private, everything just was what it had to be for me to be here now and you know, wherever I'm gonna be. I truly believe that everything has to happen a certain way. And I can talk back now and say, oh, I regret doing this, but I actually don't. I think I learned, I lived, I'm here now. Everything happened the way it had to. I could have left earlier, but I might have not been strong enough to hold that decision. And I left now, and it's what had to happen. And I just hope that, like, you know, it all works out in the end. And that's all I hope for, is that we could both be happy, because at the end of the day, when you truly love somebody, I literally want nothing more in this world than for him to be happy. And I know that he has not been as happy as he could be for a long time. And that's one of the reasons that I decided to end the relationship, is because he deserves 100% happiness. And so do I. So that's all that I can hope, is that together, apart, whatever it is, like we're both 100% happy. So I just don't want anyone. Yeah.
Okay, moving. I know we're ending this podcast, but I just want to say, proud of you. Big step. More coming. We have never on this podcast both been single.
Crazy.
On Chemical X. You're like, I'm not proud of it, so I don't want to cheers
I don't want to cheers to that.
But I'm just saying. People
are like, you're so happy to be single. I'm like, well, here's the thing.
It's literally so weird. We both started this podcast, both in relationships. Mine ended a year ago. Yours was still running. No pun intended.
Thanks a lot.
No. I'm so bad at being that friend to be like, 100%. But I don't want you to start crying. I don't need this.
If you started pulling all this, how are you doing? I would have left the room. The only way I'm here right now is because I know that I can't cry in your energy.
No.
Like, it's all good. Like, I don't need to be in part of these. How are you feeling inside?
No,
though?
no,
like,
no,
don't
no.
fucking. When people say, "Are you okay?" Yeah, I'm peachy. I'm great. I'm good.
It's so weird
Loving
because
life.
like even when you guys broke up, I wasn't like calling you every day to be like, hey, what's up? It's like when I'm seeing you or when we have to discuss something. Oh, and by the way,
How are you?
How are you? Like,
You
it's
good?
like, it's the fifth.
You up?
It's actually like the fifth thing I ask you, which is probably it's bad, but I think for you that's
It's great. It's great.
it's like it's a way to weasel you
It's because
in.
people like ask me and I go, yeah, it's good, it's good. Anyways, when you coming over for the podcast, the other day she goes, by the way, isn't it scary sleeping alone? I said, thanks, Ale. It's 1:00 in the morning. Thank you. Yes, it is scary living alone. Thank you. I'm going in my dark house alone. Thank you. Good. Supportive.
Switching topics, I just want to congratulate you. I know you got a promotion at work, so there's still amazing things to be happy for. So cheers to that.
Cheers.
Cheers to a new era of this podcast.
Where we have maybe some technical glitches.
Cheers
'cause we don't have
to
David Vine.
finally seeing the most money we've ever seen through Snapchat. So if that isn't a guide to the right direction, then hopes to, becoming millionaires. Cheers to that.
Cheers to that. Anything else?
And cheers to fucking life, guys. Life is so short. Your happiness is the only thing that matters.
100%. Cheers.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment down below. Veronica just poured her fucking heart out here. If you're not going to give us a like, I don't respect you.
Give us a comment. Come on.
Come on.
Don't ask me if it's scary sleeping alone, but like, ask me something else.
But like, I'm dark, so.
Like, whatever.
Like, is it? That's a wrap. I think it was amazing. Veronica, everything she said came out the way I think you wanted to say
Yeah,
it.
it was like
It was.